Well, hello again, everybody. Welcome tonight to our show. We've got an exciting time for you tonight. We're going to be answering the question, why is my body attacking itself? And in particular, we're going to be talking about autoimmune diseases. Oh, yeah. One of those things that I guess everyone hears about, some people are living with, and it is causing lots of trouble for some people. So tonight we're going to spend some time talking about autoimmune diseases and answering the question, why is my body attacking itself? If you're new to the channel, I'm Dr. Dwain Woode. That's Woode with an E. The E stands for endocrinology, and we help you understand your body so that you can take charge of your health, avoid complications, and live a healthy, fulfilling life. We are so glad that you're here to join us tonight. If you are new to the channel also, go ahead and put new in the chat. We would love to welcome you to this community as we get through the evening. If you have a question, go ahead and put a Q in front of that question so we'll know that that is a question for us to answer. Well, let's see who is out there. I know Maria, I saw her answering or saying hello to everyone. So Maria, thank you for being, and she's reminding everyone, to put a Q, and if you are new, to go ahead and put new in the comments as well. Let's see. Good evening, everyone. We've got Lake Watsarang. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that properly. She says hello. If you can give us a phonetic pronunciation of your name, I would love to say that correctly. And then we got Chris Bird. He says hello Dr. Woode. Hey man, welcome back. I'm glad to see you here. And we're always excited when we get new people, and when, of course, we get our returning group of folks as we kind of get through the night, and as we talk about things to help you really understand your body. That's what we are all about here. And tonight in particular, we're going to be talking about autoimmune diseases, and we're going to share some special things about 3 autoimmune diseases that fall into the endocrine system, but these concepts will also carry over into autoimmune diseases in other parts of the body. So just excited to be here. All right, so let's see. Let's go ahead and hello, Cuthbert. Maria's greeting folks again. Ballesterio, thank you, and of course, Lake Watsarang Evie is saying hello. hello. So glad that you guys are here. Awesome. All right. Well, so autoimmune diseases. The first thing to know is that the body is an amazing device, right? The machinery of the body is incredible. And the body's main function is to stay alive, right? That's what it does. And all of the things that go on in the body is with the intention of keeping the system running, keeping the body functioning, and keeping you alive. A lot of the disease processes that we see in the body are as a result of it trying to stay alive. So the body is willing to sacrifice certain parts of itself. That's right, willing to sacrifice parts of itself to keep living. That's why sometimes you have an infection and part of the skin will slough off, right? Because the body's trying to protect the rest of itself. You may have someone who has, and one of the infections that we see, right, in diabetes, lower limb infections. And so that part of the body can become infected. You can get osteomyelitis. You can actually get necrosis of certain parts of the body. And so the body says, I'm willing to lose a toe. I'm willing to lose a toenail. I'm really willing to lose a foot rather than have the entire organism, the entire system die. And so part of what it's doing is trying to keep us alive. One of the most fascinating systems in the body is the immune system. Oh, I love it, right? Because of all the systems that are there, the immune system is the security for the body. You can think of it like, these cells, these mechanisms, these things that the body's producing are there, and they're kind of surveying, right? So they're walking around like security guards, and they're looking in the system to try to find things that don't belong. And so a very important concept is this concept of me, right? So when we are born, when we're developing, the body has an amazing way of identifying what is self, right? What's me? That's right. Right. So this belongs to me. I love me. And then, hey, wait a minute. Is that me or not? Why this is important is because the body has to be able to tell the difference, because if it can't tell the difference, then we're going to run into what we're going to be talking about here tonight, right? Autoimmune diseases. And so when your cells are born, if you will, for you to use that term, when your cells are born, they are identified, most of them, as me. Right? Myself. That belongs to me. I like that. I see that in here. It's part of what I am. And anything that doesn't look like that, anything that doesn't have that identification is foreign and does not belong here. Right? So that's the question, right? Is that me or is it not me? And so the body does a wonderful job of doing that. But when that system breaks down, then the body runs into a problem. So if I can't identify whether a particular thing is me or not, then the thing that is there, that piece of that cell or that tissue or whatever it is, then either I accept it as myself, and a lot of infections, particularly viruses, will cause the body not to be able to identify that virus, right? So some viruses will go into the cell, and because they go into the cell and they incorporate themselves into the cell, then the body cannot identify them. Right? And in some cases, they take over the machinery of the body and forces it to do other things, right? So this idea of me versus me, or self, if you will, versus non-self is very, very important. So let's imagine that something happens. You get an infection, or some foreign body enters into your body, right? So some foreign particle enters into your body, and the body says, hey, that does not look like me, right? So it begins doing what? It begins attacking it. And that's what we want. We want the body to make or have a brisk response to anything that's foreign that's coming into the system, because we don't want anything damaging the system, right? That's the immune system. The immune system, the surveying part of the body, walking around looking for things, identifying them either as me or not me. Well, what happens if it identifies it as not me? Well, an entire cascade of things go on, right? So cells are sent to the area. So white cells, the body begins making things called immunoglobulins, right? And this, I'm giving you a simplified version of that. The body begins making these immunoglobulins, and those immunoglobulins help the body to begin packaging, if you will, or attacking or attaching that part that we have identified as not ourselves, and then we get it out of the body, right? Somehow. There are a whole host of ways that begins happening, all right? And so we've identified it, we've encapsulated, we've got these immunoglobulins that have been produced, and now we've gotten rid of that particle, we've gotten rid of that invader, gotten rid of that thing that is not me. And everything is great, right? Because we've done the job. The body's done the job. The immune system has done what it's supposed to do. Well, here's something that happens. Sometimes one of two different things happen. Either the body makes an immunoglobulin, that thing that was supposed to attack the foreigner or the foreign body or the not me part of what's there. It was supposed to do that, and it did it. But somehow that immunoglobulin begins recognizing incorrectly other parts of the body as not me. Right? So there's a cell that's supposed to be recognized as me, and the body, one of those immunoglobulins, sees it and begins attacking it. When that happens, the body then begins making more and more and more of these erroneous immunoglobulins, and they continue attacking the system, or continue attacking what is now me. And that's where we run into what's called an autoimmune disease. Auto because it's me itself, and it's being propagated or damaged, if you will, by the immune system. So autoimmune, right? Autoimmune, autoimmune diseases. Okay, so that's one way that can happen. The other way that can happen is that something in the body may mutate, right? So something happens in the body, and one of the cells mutate, and it's supposed to be gotten rid of. That's what the body does. Anytime there is a cell that is damaged, that shouldn't be there, the body goes and the body tries to get rid of it. Well, this cell is damaged, and the body recognizes it and goes to go ahead and get rid of it. But it also now has an antibody to this misshapen, if you will, cell. And then now it begins continuing to damage, if you will, or attack parts of itself. Right? So that is an autoimmune disease. The surveying system, the immune system, is out there looking for things to get rid of because it's identified as not me, and it does a good job, but somehow something goes wrong, and now it begins recognizing self, me, as something that shouldn't be there, and it begins causing damage. Okay, that's an autoimmune disease. And we're going to talk tonight about 3 specific ones that fall under the endocrine system, but there are so many autoimmune diseases that are out there. And you guys have probably heard of things like or lupus. I said Behçet's. Behçet's is a autoimmune disease. Or lupus you've heard of. You've probably heard of vitiligo, right, which is an autoimmune disease. You've probably heard of alopecia, which is an autoimmune disease. So many things. Or rheumatoid arthritis, that's a big one. That's an autoimmune disease. But tonight we're going to be talking about 3. We're going to be talking about Hashimoto's thyroiditis. We're going to be talking about Graves' disease, and we're going to be talking about type 1 diabetes in the setting of autoimmune diseases. All right, awesome. All right, well, let's see who's out there. Let's see. Okay, Yvonne here. Okay, Yvonne. Hey, Yvonne. Okay, so we'll let's see. Maria says to pronounce it Lakwachi Wang. Okay, thank you. All right. Hello, and let's see, Lauren. Hey, Lauren, how are you doing? Good evening. So glad to see you. Glad that you are here to join us tonight. And then Maria continued saying hi to Lauren. So very good. So once again, if you have questions, please make sure that you put those in the comments with a Q so that we will get to those as we get through the evening. All right. So the very first autoimmune disease in the endocrine system that I want to talk about is Hashimoto's thyroiditis. So Hashimoto's thyroiditis. And Hashimoto's thyroiditis is an autoimmune disease that occurs when the body recognizes the thyroid, right, as non-self. The body right? Remember that idea of me versus not me? So this is a not me. And so the body produces antibodies, right, to different parts of the thyroid. For instance, thyroid peroxidase is one thing that you may see, or it's written sometimes as TPO, thyroid peroxidase antibody, or anti-thyroid peroxidase antibody. Or thyroglobulin, that's another one that you may see. And these are components of the thyroid, or parts of the thyroid, that the body has produced an antibody against. And so that antibody continues now to attack the thyroid, right? So this is one of those instances where it's attacking the thyroid. And you could think of this as almost like, if you have your finger on a table and somebody comes along and kind of smashes that finger, right? Then the finger swells and it gets better after a while. And they come along later and they smash the finger again, and the finger swells and it gets better. And they smash it again and it swells and gets better. Well, after a while, guess what? The finger doesn't function like it's supposed to, right? It may become hard, calloused, may not be able to bend as easily. The skin around it, right, is harder and tougher, right? And at the joint, it doesn't work kind of like it's supposed to. You may not be able to bend it all the way or wrap it around something, right, depending on which finger it is. And the same thing is happening with the thyroid. So these antibodies, right, that are out there that recognizes the thyroid as not self, or parts of the thyroid as not self, not me, then the body is going and it's trying, just like it would do with any other not me thing that's in the system, it's trying to kind of get rid of it and beat it up. And right, so you can think of the antibodies are constantly beating on the thyroid. And after a while, the thyroid becomes hard and calloused. And so the mechanisms that are in the thyroid that are supposed to be producing hormone to help your body function, they don't work as well. They may not stop working all the way, but they begin producing less and less and less and less hormone. And as you know, thyroid hormone is very important to the body, right? It is ubiquitous, right? So the thyroid hormone does so many different things in the body. And if the amount of hormone that's there continues to go down, then you can begin seeing symptoms of hypothyroidism, or low underactive thyroid. Like what? Like fatigue, for example. Right? And we're going to correlate some of this back to autoimmune diseases in general, but let's talk a little bit about thyroid disease, right? Or hypothyroidism. So those patients, if they are not producing enough hormone, they can be tired, right? The heart rate can be lower. They feel lethargic. They put on weight, right? Because remember, thyroid is responsible for energy and metabolism. So if the thyroid is low, then your energy is low, metabolism is down. So you're putting on weight. You don't feel like doing things, right? So the skin is dry, the hair is dry, the nails are brittle. All those things begin happening because the body doesn't have enough thyroid hormone in it. Now, let me jump back to autoimmune diseases in general. So if an autoimmune disease is attacking a part of the body, there are several things that begin happening, right? And you can pull up a book, one of the books on diseases, and you can pick any thyroid or any autoimmune disease, and you will see some similar symptoms. You will see fatigue, dry hair, dry skin, dry nails, right? You'll see sometimes mental clouding, right? So I can't think straight, right? I'm not as sharp as I used to be. You'll see sleepiness, right? So all those things are common to autoimmune diseases. And one of the challenges sometimes is that someone comes in and they have that constellation of symptoms that I just described, and we've got to try to figure out, well, which one of the autoimmune diseases does this person have? Or even do they even have an autoimmune disease, right? Because there are certain disease processes that also can mimic these autoimmune diseases. So that's hypothyroidism, or Hashimoto's, if you will. And let me make that distinction. So Hashimoto's thyroiditis is an autoimmune disease that can lead to hypo or underactive thyroid, right? So someone can have the antibodies in their system, and those antibodies are beating up on the thyroid, and if they have not damage the thyroid to the point where the thyroid is not making enough hormone, then that person really doesn't get diagnosed with hypothyroidism, even though they have the antibodies, right? And that sometimes, and that's we can have a whole nother, another show, another discussion about that, because there is, right? So at what point does someone become hypothyroid? Right, so the antibodies are there, and it's continuing to do the damage to the thyroid, right? And the thyroid is getting calloused, it's getting harder, right? And there's several people that are out there. I shouldn't say several, millions of people that are out there that have these antibodies that are in their system, but they've not been diagnosed with hypo or low underactive thyroid, right? So very, very good point there. Awesome. All right, and so let's see. What do we have out there? Hey, Jennifer. Let's see. Jennifer is here. She says, "Love your shirt, Dr. Woode." Yeah, I'm going to talk about this shirt here in a minute. Thank you. So I'm going to keep Jennifer. I'm going to keep this question as when we get to our question and answer. Maria says, "Yes, love your shirt." Awesome. All right. Well, let me pause here for a minute, and let's say, if you have not already done so, guys, please go to our social media, LinkedIn, TikTok, YouTube, of course, here, Twitter, Buy Me a Coffee. Those are all our social media. We do various things on each one of those, LinkedIn, TikTok and I'll show you another slide here in a minute. But we'd love for you to engage with us with any of those, and all of those, actually, all of those social media platforms. And one that I want to point out specifically is that Buy Me a Coffee. If you are interested in supporting the channel, if you like what we're doing here as we grow this community, provide a place of safety, a place of knowledge, Buy Me a Coffee is a place you can go to help support the channel. If you want to see more exciting content, then, of course, live here every Monday at 7 o'clock, we do this show. We get to answer your questions. Our TikTok on Fridays at 10 a.m., where we put out just a 60-second, usually we try to keep it within that 60-second clip on some aspect of health, right? So check that out. And then on Twitter, daily, we are doing little snippets, videos. We've got some recipes there, a little tips and tricks for you on how to live a healthy life, right? And that's really what we're doing, right? Once again, we produce content, we help content, we answer questions to help you understand your body so you can take charge of your health, avoid complications, and live healthy, fulfilling lives, all right? So then the next autoimmune disease that I want to talk about is Graves' disease. Now, Graves' disease is also a disease of the thyroid, right? So Graves' disease is also a disease of the thyroid. And so we are so excited. We want to talk about that. So Graves' disease is it produces the opposite effect of Hashimoto's. So Hashimoto's typically will lead to an underactive thyroid. Graves' disease leads to an overactive thyroid, or hyperthyroidism. And that's an interesting one, right? Because what happens is those antibodies that we've been talking about, the TPO and so forth, they will beat up on the thyroid and prevent the thyroid from producing the hormone that it's supposed to. In Graves' disease, get this one, the antibodies that are produced, they force the thyroid to make more hormone. Yeah, right? And so there's one in particular called the thyroid stimulating immunoglobulin, right? Stimulating. So just like the regular thyroid hormone, or TSH, thyroid stimulating hormone, just like that tells the thyroid to make more thyroid hormone, this antibody, which is not supposed to be there, it was developed as an autoimmune process, it forces the thyroid to make more hormone. And so all of the symptoms of an overactive thyroid, right? So heart's going really fast, palpitations. People are losing weight, right? Because their metabolism is kicked up. They may have dry skin, dry hair, not because of an underactive thyroid, because the thyroid now is going so fast, right? And they feel fatigued, not because they don't have energy. They feel fatigued because they feel like they're running a marathon all the time. Okay, so isn't that interesting that there are antibodies that can stop the thyroid from working or hypo, and now there are antibodies that can cause the thyroid to produce a lot, and those are two coins, or two faces, if you will, of a coin when we talk about the functioning of the thyroid. Now, there are many. And if you Google, if you go on the internet, if you listen to people, read their stories, there's so many people that have been out there or are out there, and their thyroid is just functioning a little bit outside of normal, right? And they may have those symptoms, and it takes them sometimes a while to be diagnosed because it's not recognized that there are these issues going on, and they may be diagnosed with other things before it's finally identified that it is a thyroid related problem. Okay, so if you're having those symptoms, if you're having those issues, continue to talk with your providers, continue to talk with your folks as they continue to search, but don't give up, right? Because it can be identified and it can be treated. All right, so those are the thyroid hypothyroidism or Hashimoto's thyroiditis, and then hyperthyroidism, Graves' disease. Two faces of the same coin, right? One hyper and one hypo, right? Overactive and underactive thyroid. And then one that we've been talking about, one disease that we've talked about before, one disease that we continue to talk about. In fact, someone was in my office today and he asked me the question is, are there things that are being done to treat or prevent or cure type 1 diabetes, right? Because most of what you will see, most of what you will hear in the media, on television, on the internet, everyone is talking about type 2 diabetes, right? When we talk about the numbers and the growing statistics and when we begin starting to use that word, pandemic, right? When we talk about that 464 million people, right? A lot of those, most of those are patients that we're talking about with type 2 diabetes. But type 1 diabetes is an autoimmune disease. And we believe what happens is that someone gets an infection. Like we talked about earlier. Remember, that's usually how the autoimmune disease may happen. Someone gets an infection and the body fights the infection. And then the antibodies are produced and the antibodies start to recognize me as not me, right? So self versus not self, that whole idea of what we talked about earlier. So the body begins recognizing self as foreign, and then it begins to try to encapsulate it, try to package it, and try to get it out of the system. And the beta cells are the cells in the pancreas that produce insulin. And so they begin being damaged by these antibodies. And there's several antibodies that we may see. There's one called GAD65, insulin autoantibodies, or anti-pancreatic cells antibodies, right? So there are lots of different ones that are there. And so those antibodies begin damaging the cells that make insulin. And when those cells begin to get damaged, the amount of insulin in the body goes down. And when it reaches the point where it's too low to manage the sugar, glucose in the body, then that patient is diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. We believe, and if you read the literature, Coxsackie virus has been the one that has been implicated in type 1 diabetes. You can read different versions of that or different other viruses that they say are potential, but most places will list Coxsackie as one of the viruses that potentially causes that. And so once again, the autoimmune disease, the body recognizes something in itself as not self, and then begins attacking that and trying to encapsulate it, package it, and get it out of the system, because the body's function is to try to stay alive. Right? Remember, that is its function. It's always trying to stay alive, and it will do everything it can to keep you alive, to the point, and this is just one of those mechanisms that has kind of gone awry. Right? This doesn't function the way we want it to function. All right. All right. Let's see who's joined us. We've got Jennifer. I've got your question there. Natalie, hi brother love, what's up? Good to see you, sis. We've got Tom Albert. Hey Tom. He says hi Dr. Wood. Hi to you. Maria says, oh sweetie Natalie Wood, welcome back. And then Tom Planton, thank you for tuning in. Now, and I'm going to talk about this here in a minute, but several of you have mentioned my shirt. Recently, I was invited to a getting back together party function. A friend of mine invited us out, and we went to Top Golf. And Top Golf is, if you've not been there, kind of a sports theme. You get out there and you swing and you hit the golf ball. By the way, I'm not very good at that, so I'm gonna join those guys at some other times. And so we went out and we spent some time together out in the fresh air. We ate some food, we swung some clubs, but it was a very, very nice time. And I'm going to come back and I'm going to talk about that a little later on. This is not a sponsor. I just liked when we were there, and I bought one of their shirts, which is what you see. Right, and just had a good time at the place, and they're all over the place. So, and we'll talk about how that event that I went to plays into what we do here on the channel. Okay, all right. So let's see, what do we have? Let's go ahead and let's see if we can pull up some questions. And I think Jennifer had one. Let me go back and see if I could find that. So by the way, one of the reasons, guys, for putting the Q in front of your question is I can go back and I can search for the Q. And when I search for the Q, I can find the question. Yeah. So that makes it easy. So now you know why. Now you know why we say to put the Q in front of the question. All right, here we go. Okay. So let's pop this one up. So Jennifer is asking, are autoimmune diseases inherited? Are autoimmune diseases inherited? Very good question, Jennifer. And the answer is we're not really sure. Right? So type 1 diabetes, there is a genetic component to type 1 diabetes. And it may be that certain families are predisposed, right? So for instance, type 1 diabetes, there is a genetic component, and you can actually test genetics, test the genes, and find certain genes that are common, right? And they say, okay, that family, that patient, that person is likely to develop diabetes because he has or she has this particular gene. Okay, so there is some component of heredity to some of the autoimmune diseases. Okay, Good question, Jennifer. I like it. All right, let's see. Let me pop some of these. So these are some frequently asked questions. Look at that, Jennifer. The same as your question. I like it. All right, let's see. What do we have here? What triggers autoimmune diseases? What triggers autoimmune diseases? So the trigger for autoimmune diseases, and this gets a little bit into the treatment for, right? So let's talk about it in two phases. The first phase is someone who does not have an autoimmune disease, right? And what triggers it to develop. And then we'll talk about someone who has an autoimmune disease and what triggers it in terms of a flare-up, okay? I know you didn't ask both of those, but I'm going to put those together, whoever sent that question in. So once again, we believe that there are things that happen in your life. So you get an infection, you get a cold, you get a virus, some foreign thing enters the body. The body has a response to it. It encapsulates, it packages it, it gets rid of it, but either antibodies are left over, right? So it made 10 antibodies to fight this thing and it used 6 of them and there are 4 left over, and so they're floating around and they identify some part of the body as non-self and then begin attacking it. Or some part of the body mutates, all right? And so now the body develops antibodies to this new misshapen, misformed part of itself, and then that causes the flare-up, right? So several ways that can happen. And once again, those are simplified. As you go and you read a paper and read books, you'll see the technical jargon and so forth for the development of antibodies. Those are simple concepts that I just gave you, okay? So for all of you technophiles, don't beat me up. All right, simplified version. All right, and so that's for someone who does not have an autoimmune disease. They're developing an autoimmune disease, and that's how that begins happening. Now, let's talk about someone who has an autoimmune disease, and what causes that autoimmune disease to quote unquote flare up. Okay, now this right here. We can talk show after show after show, night after night after night, days after days after days, and we would probably never exhaust all of the ideas that people are coming up with this part of it. All right. We believe that there are things, once again, that happen in our lives. I'm going to give you a list of maybe 2 or 3 that can cause flare-ups in autoimmune diseases. Number 1 is fatigue. Being tired, no sleep, stress. How many was that? Lack of sleep, stress, anxiety, depression, right? All of those things we believe can cause autoimmune diseases to flare up. So, as an example, when we have patients who have lupus, one of the things that we stress is rest, right? Because we believe that being tired, being fatigued can cause autoimmune diseases to flare up, right? So that's one group of them. The other thing is food. There are certain foods that we believe can predispose, or I shouldn't say predispose, can cause flare-ups, particularly foods that are pro-inflammatory. So once again, so autoimmune diseases, and I didn't mention this, so let me go ahead and put that in here now. The process of developing immune cells or immunoglobulins, if you will, and sending cells to a particular area to encapsulate, to eat, to macrophage or phagocyte, or all that process, that's called inflammation. Yeah. And so when there is inflammation in the body's immune system, remember the immune system is kind of like those are security guards, right? So when something comes into the body, it's kind of like being at a store or even at your house, right? And there's a fire alarm and you pull the fire alarm. What happens? Yeah, so everybody now is aware that something is going on. So whenever there's inflammation in the body for whatever cause, the entire immune system becomes heightened. And so now it's looking, say, something is going on in the system. I don't know where it is, but I hear the alarm going off. And so those immunoglobulins that were just kind of hanging out to the thyroid, to the joints, right, to the skin, to the hair, to whatever part of the body that they are they have been sensitized to, those immunoglobulins now start, right, start going around. So the security system has been turned up. And so now anything that's trying to come in, right, starts to be scrutinized a lot more. I like that. Yeah, scrutinize. I'm going to say that. I'm going to use that. I just came up with that just now, right? They begin being scrutinized more. And so whenever, a food, an infection, a tiredness, sleepiness, right? All those things cause the immune system to kind of, it's hypervigilant, right? So now, think about Barney Fife, right? So Barney Fife is aware, and he's just kind of going around and trying to find stuff all around the place, right? All right. So good, very, very good question. I like that. I like that one. All right, let's see. What else do we have? How does one get an autoimmune disease? And this is, kind of going back to what we were talking about before. We believe there are several ways to get it. We think infections can cause it as the body fights other infections. And now, we've said that a few times, how the antibodies can potentially be affect the body. All right, let's see. What do we got? Are autoimmune diseases curable? Woohoo! Love it, love it, love it. I love this question. Are autoimmune diseases curable? Let's see how to answer this. The somewhat. Is that a good answer? So if we believe that autoimmune diseases are typically due to inflammation, if we can decrease the inflammation, the inflammatory processes in the body, then potentially an autoimmune disease can be subdued. Right? Is that? Yeah, I think I'll use that. Become subdued, so that it doesn't have the symptoms or as heightened or as big or as problematic a symptom as you may have when it's in full flare. And so there are several people, and let's go back to the three that we talked about. We talked about Hashimoto's thyroiditis, Graves' disease, and we talked about type 1 diabetes. So there's several papers, several things, several people that are out there that say if you can decrease the inflammation, then potentially the Hashimoto's gets better. And there have been cases where people, because they've changed their diets, right? We have seen some people that have been off of medication. Now, let me hasten to say this. There have not been any, as of now, any randomized controlled studies that have shown a direct link between a certain diet and someone coming off of, for instance, medication for hypothyroidism. We have seen places where their antibodies have decreased, right? And theoretically, if we can decrease the antibodies and the antibodies aren't beaten up on the thyroid as much, then we can delay and or eliminate the progression to an underactive thyroid. The same idea goes for Graves' disease. So changing your diet, and there's a couple of books that I actually talk about for my patients. One is the Autoimmune Solution, and the other is Why Do I Still Have Symptoms If My Thyroid Is Normal? Right? Why do I still have symptoms if my thyroid level, is normal? Right. So those are two books, but very, very good question. And if you scour the internet, everybody's talking about the cure. And I've got to say, maybe. Okay, maybe. Are autoimmune diseases fatal? Are autoimmune diseases fatal? Good question once again. And the complications of some autoimmune diseases can be fatal, right? For example, lupus, if you develop kidney problems from lupus, then that is fatal. There's something called good pastures, right? That's a damaging of the kidneys. Once again, the basement membrane of the kidneys. That can be fatal. Type 1 diabetes, if not treated properly, can be fatal. Graves' disease, if not treated, can be fatal, right? So, the answer is probably yes. Not all autoimmune diseases, but they can lead to complications that then can be fatal. So, very good question, and it's one for us to keep in mind, because sometimes, we think autoimmune diseases are, just my body, and, we kind of go along and, we got some medicine for that. But if that's not managed properly, then it can, yes, be fatal. Okay. Are autoimmune diseases considered, I guess I should say, are people with autoimmune diseases considered to be immunocompromised? And probably yes. And notice I'm putting probably and likely in front of a lot of these answers. We certainly know that patients who have diabetes, for instance, type 1 diabetes, if they're immunocompromised, if we're not controlling their blood sugars, they can be predisposed to infections and worsening infections and co-infections and super infections, and I can go on and on and on. So okay, I hope that answers the question. And let's see what this one is. Can autoimmune diseases cause cancer? And there has not been a direct link to autoimmune diseases and a cancer, but some cancers, right, are more common in patients with certain autoimmune diseases, right? We can't say that caused it, but some cancers are more common in patients with autoimmune diseases. All right, so let's go back and let's see who we got out here. Let's take some questions from, or say hello to a few people. Here's one. Oh, here's a question. Let's see. This is a long one, so might have to put this up there twice. Do you have to treat someone with prescription if he has a normal T3, T4, but TSH is slightly high? EKG shows PACs. Okay, let me put that back up so we can. Do you have to treat someone with prescription if he has a normal T3, T4 level, but TSH is slightly high? EKG shows PACs. Okay. Premature atrial contraction, for those of you who didn't see that. So let's kind of walk through that a little bit. So normal thyroid functions, right? So the hormones that are coming out from the thyroid, those are normal, is what we just saw there. T3, T4 are normal. And the TSH, which is the signal from the brain to the thyroid to do something, is elevated, right? And the question is, do we have to treat with medication? So there are several approaches that we can do here. One, it depends on how high the TSH is. So we've seen, TSHs that are slightly elevated. For instance, if a normal range for a TSH is, 0.5 to 4.5, okay, so typical normal range, and the TSH, when they check it, is 5, with a T4 and a T3 that are normal, then a lot of times I will recheck that set of labs, right? Because the thyroid does fluctuate. And so the next time we check it, it's, 3.2 or 2, and we check it again and again and again, and so it's back in the normal range. It's in the range there all the time. Occasionally it'll flare up above 4.5, and so that patient may not need thyroid medication, right? And they may be one of those ones where we say, hey, maybe if you change your diet, if you avoid this or eat this, then that can improve it. We decrease your inflammation. Okay. But if I have someone who has a TSH, I don't know, 200, and that's not, that we've seen that 200, 300, 400. In that case, it is unlikely that the T3 and T4 will be normal unless there is some resistance that's going on, right? It's unlikely that T3 and T4 will be normal in that patient. And so likely that patient will have to be on medication. So once again, it depends on where we are, how high we are, on whether that patient gets medication or not. Okay, good question. So Tom says, okay, so going back to the other question, he's adding some additional information. He said low TSH. So let's add the other question up first. Do you have to treat someone with prescriptions? He has normal TSH, normal 3T4, and a low, right? So that changes the question. And once again, it depends. Depends on how low it is. So for both of those, there is something called subclinical hypothyroidism. Remember, that's on the low side for low thyroid. And then subclinical hyperthyroidism. So in both of those cases, the subclinical hypo, the T3, T4s are normal, typically, and the abnormality occurs with the TSH. So subclinical hypothyroidism has an elevated TSH and a normal T3, T4. And, typically when most of us will get free T3 and free T4, but that's a whole nother conversation, right? So once again, it depends on how low. According to guidelines, and a lot of times we'll go by guidelines, if someone is 65 or older and they have a TSH that's low, and there's a specific number, right? And if they're low, then the recommendation is that we treat them. 65 or older with certain criteria that we treat them. If they're younger than that, then we consider just watching them. Okay, so it depends once again on the number. Same thing for subclinical hypothyroidism. If the TSH is a certain level, then we consider treating the patient. But if TSH is high but not above a certain level, then we don't treat. And notice I'm not giving those levels because there's specific criteria that we have, and I don't want to confuse the question with the criteria. But the idea is that there are certain patient populations that if they fit the criteria with an elevated TSH and a normal free T4, that we treat them, and there's certain other patients that we don't treat. Right? So very good. I love that question. You guys are on it. Let's see. Jennifer is asking a question. She said, "What is type 1 diabetes mellitus considered? Why is it considered an autoimmune disease?" Oh, very good. Very good question, Jennifer. So type 1 diabetes is considered an autoimmune disease because we believe that the body creates antibodies against itself, whether it's against insulin, right? So anti-insulin autoantibodies, against the islet cells themselves, all right? Or against the pancreatic cells. So there's anti-pancreatic islet cell antibodies. There's insulin autoantibodies. There's this thing called GAD65, which is GAD is one of the enzymes in the body, and so there's an antibody against it, right? So those are the things that we believe are causing what we call insulitis, so inflammation of the insulin cells, and they begin dying, and because they die, then we don't have enough insulin, and then that leads to diabetes. Okay, it's very good there. All right. Oh, guys, hold on a second. I got to grab something real quick. All right, and I'm back. So the very good questions. Very good questions. All right. So I want to give you my thought for today. And my thought for today, and I started it a little bit earlier. Last week we talked about giving yourself a gift. And we talked about giving yourself the gift of consistency. And today we're going to talk about giving yourself another gift. And that, as we get right, as we get into the season of gift giving, a lot of times we'll give gifts to other people. We go out, and I was out yesterday and saw there were so many people that are out and about down at the mall. And we get so excited about this time of year, and we're wrapping gifts and we put them in boxes, and Amazon is shipping things all over the place. But how about giving yourself a gift? So last week we talked about the gift of consistency, and today I want to talk about the gift of self-care. And that's where this Top Golf came in, because when I was invited to go, I thought, oh man, I'm so busy. And even when I got there, we were talking, some of us were talking about this issue. I'm so busy. I'm doing so many different things. Do I have time to take an hour and a half out of my schedule to go and just hang out? Have you heard that before? Yeah. Have you said that before? Yes, you have, right? And self-care is so important, because there is nothing that we have that's more valuable than our time and our health. If we have those two things, there is no limit to what we can do. But if we have everything else and we don't have those two, then what's the point? Okay? So self-care. So self-care is an individual taking or incorporating the practice of managing themselves or taking care of themselves into their lives. That's what self-care is. So you taking care of you by doing several things. And we'll list a few of those here in a minute. And the point here is, this is not a medical treatment, although we can use it as in conjunction with medical treatment, right? But this is you simply doing some things that can help you in your body, in your day, and so forth. So number one, there has to be some physical activity. Yeah, so going out, Top Golf, right? So that's why that was so exciting to me, right? So we were there, we were swinging. Of course, like that. By the end of the day, by the end of the night, I was getting better, right? So I was hitting farther and farther. So some physical activity, right? To get those muscles moving, to get that air in the lung, get them expanded, get the heart going, right? Some physical activity, very important as part of self-care. Taking care of your body, making sure that you are doing all the things that are needed, right, to keep this machine running efficiently. Social, right? There's the physical, there's the social. Once again, Top Golf, all right? So physical, we're out there hitting those balls. And there's the social. So we were talking and we were engaging with each other, right? Aside from the grind of being on the job, in the job, doing the project, doing the class, taking the test, right? We were just talking. I mean, now, some of us, as we were talking, maybe our jobs came up, but it wasn't in the setting of, oh my God, we got this thing that we got to do, right? So social. It is so important to develop a good social system around you. There's so many things that you can go through, that you can survive, that you can deal with if you have a good social structure, a good social system. The mental. How often do I hear people say, oh, I'm doing fine? I've had people come into the office who have had blood sugars that have gone crazy over the last 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 months. And I say to them, hey, what happened? Or what's been going on? And they're like, oh, nothing. I'm doing fine. And so we talk and we talk and we talk, and we find out, okay, well, mom died 2 months ago, or my husband is sick, or something is going on, and they are just kind of, they're white knuckling it. They put their head down, and by God, they're going to get through this come hell or high water. But taking time, whether it's talking to someone, well, I shouldn't say whether it's, but talking to someone, right? Having someone help through that process. Meditation, great way of kind of helping to relieve the mind. Last week, we talked about visualization, right? So many different ways. I read a book, several years now, a friend of mine gave me, called The Power of Now, right? So not thinking about the past, so not regret, and not thinking about the future, anxiety, but just being in the present right now and knowing that right now I am okay. So the mental. Emotional, right? Emotional. We are so good at picking up for other people how they're feeling, how they are thinking, how they are, right? But we're not very good at listening to ourselves, right? So am I angry? Am I frustrated? Am I happy? Am I sad? Right? So all of those things, right? Taking care of the emotional. And that, once again, falls into, some of it is being in a community so that the community can help to help you get through some of the emotional issues. And then spiritual. Now, your beliefs may be different, but there is, and it doesn't have to be, a big religious experience, right? So spiritual, there is a power in the spirit that we sometimes neglect and forget, that there's something in us that allows us to go through some of the things that we do, but tapping into the strength that's in that spirit and allowing that spirit to come out and to connect us and to be a part of our lives is so, so important. So self-care, so important if we're going to be able to get through. And once again, I keep referring back to COVID-19, that it is amazing that we are still standing. So give yourself the gift of consistency. Give yourself the gift of self-care. And as we get into the month, to the rest of the end of the month, we're going to talk a little bit more about some other gifts that we can give ourselves. So as you are preparing gifts for other people, remember to take care of you. All right. Well, guys, I am so glad that you have been here. So glad. Let's see. We got Tom says, thanks, Dr. Woode. Maria says, gift of self-care. She said, guilty, doctor. I have a lot of things to do. I have no time. Maria, is that a hint? All right. And Tom, once again, thank you for being here with us. And so, guys, I love being here talking with you. I'm so excited that you have taken some time off to join us and to be here. Once again, if you've not looked at our social media, please do so. LinkedIn, TikTok, here on the channel at 7 o'clock on Mondays, Twitter, and Buy Me a Coffee. Looking for more exciting content, 7 o'clock. Here on Mondays, our TikTok on Fridays, and our Twitter on every day. Actually, every day you can see those. So I'm glad that you're here. Thank you. This is Dr. Dwain Woode from Diabetes and Endocrine Wellness Center. We are creating content to help you understand your body so that you can take charge of your health, avoid complications, and live a healthy, fulfilling life. And we are educating the public for a better you. So let's get some music and let's get on out of here.